Shalom. Welcome back, everybody. Parsha Shavua. I'm Levi Chazan. I'm coming to you from Yerushalayim. Parsha Shemot teaches us about the upbringing of our greatest prophet that the Jewish people have and our leader, Moshe Rabbeinu. An interesting phenomenon takes place over here is that Moshe Rabbeinu himself is actually raised for almost the first 20 years of his life in the house of Paro, brought up as the prince of Egypt. The question is, why was this necessary? Why did we have to put Moshe Rabbeinu through such a task? Why couldn't he have been born amongst the Jewish people, going through the yeshiva world? Why do we find that someone who's in the non-Jewish world, someone who's the prince of the people, someone who's outside the box, so to speak, why is he chosen to be Hagoel, to be the redeemer of the Jewish people? And our commentaries answer on this particular question over here and tell us that in order to be the leader, in order to be the someone who's going to redeem the Jewish people, we need someone who has nefesh gavoa, someone who has a mighty soul, someone who's not intimidated by what other people would think. And unfortunately, a slave would be exactly that case. A slave could not think out of the box. A slave would be intimidated and not be able to stand up to the task. He'd always be looking over his shoulder, always be afraid of his own chateau. That's right. But Moshe Rabbeinu, being brought up in this environment, in the palace of Egypt, could be someone who could stand up to the task. And so that's why we find with Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's able to go out to his people and to slay the Egyptian when it's needed, and to go out when he's in Midian and to save the daughters of Yitro, because he has that nefesh gavoa, he has that big soul, and he's able to stand up to the task. We find that this is exactly the case when the Jewish people themselves left Egypt. God did not take them the straight path through the Eretz Plishtim, through the land of Plishtim, but he took them a roundabout way, a longer way, the way that took extra days to go. And the reason that our rabbis teach us is because the Jewish people, just coming out of Egypt and of slavery, had that slave mentality. They would not be able to be up to the task. As soon as they saw the Plishtim, they would become frightened and they would run back to Egypt. So God had to take them a roundabout way. We needed Moshe in that environment out there, away from the Jewish people, away from slavery, someone who was free, someone who had that big nefesh over there. Someone like Moshe could be the redeemer of the Jewish people. But more than this, we see something very interesting. When God appears to Moshe at the burning bush, he goes and tells Moshe, you will now go and redeem the Jewish people, return to Egypt. And Moshe, as we know, argued with God for almost a week. Back and forth, send somebody else, I'm not the one. We know that Moshe was very modest, but it's a lot more than this. The Netziv tells us in his commentary that it's not that Moshe Rabbeinu did not believe that the Jewish people wanted to be redeemed. Certainly they did. Under slavery, under harsh conditions, certainly they were looking for salvation. But they did not believe, according to Moshe Rabbeinu, that he could be the man to do the job. Why? He's someone who's not connected to the Jewish people. For the first 20 years, he was brought up in the house of Paro. Afterwards, he ran away to Midian for tens of years. So for his great part of his life, up until this point over here, he's not part of the Jewish community. Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, so to speak, in his argument, wouldn't it be better to get a nice Bacho Yeshiva? A nice Yeshiva Bacha? Wouldn't that be the right way to go? Get Aaron, for instance. Aaron himself was known as a prophet at the time. Get someone like Aaron. Get someone who's inside the groove with the people, so the people would respect him. I'm an outsider. I'm looked at as the Shabbos goy, so to speak, says Moshe. I'm certainly not the one up for the task. But the ways of God are hidden from us, and we exactly don't know what God has in plan and what he brings down into this world. And the Netziv sums up over there, let's not be the ones to give advice how to redeem the Jewish people. If God said this is the way that the Jewish people had to be redeemed in Egypt, so be it. This is the way that the Jews had to be redeemed. Even though, when you look at it, you see something that just can't make sense. Moshe Rabbeinu being brought up as the prince of Egypt, how could he be the redeemer of the Jewish people? But so, this is the way that it was. It's unbelievable. And in his days, the Netziv, who lived roughly about 150 years ago, with the return of the Jewish people to its land, and the religious Jews at the time were coming against this and said, well, we can't have any part of these type of people because they're not religious. They're building up the land of Israel. They're socialists. They're communists. Whatever else it is. The Netziv turned to them and said, let us not be the ones to give advice how to redeem the Jewish people. Sure, there are things to be fixed today. Here we are, 60 some odd years into the trend, into the redemption process over here. Sure, there are things to be fixed. Sure, there are things that aren't 100%. Yeah, but by sitting on the outside fence and adding rebuke and saying, oh, this isn't good, it's not a Jewish army, we can't join forces with it, etc., that's certainly not the way. If we already have made it to this point, certainly this is what God is bringing down into this world. Our best bet is to mishtatef, is to take part of this redemption process, adding our influence to the redemption process and making it a beautiful thing. So we see over here in this week's parsha, my dear brothers and sisters out there, parsha Shemot, Moshe Rabbeinu was the last person in the world that you would actually think who would be the redeemer of the Jewish people. Rabbis tell us that just like the redemption of Egypt, so will be the redemption in our day too. And that's what we have to look forward to. He's not going to be coming from the inside. He's not going to be that Bachur Yeshiva who you expect, that person over there. Oh, sure, look at him. He's got yachas. He's got this. Oh, he comes from a good family. You're going to find someone who's going to come to fix the Jewish people and to redeem us. He's going to be totally outside the box. He's going to be the guy with the long kuku and the earring in his ear. That's the guy who you're going to be looking for to redeem the Jewish people, because you never know. You never know. Hey, I'm Levi Chazan, and I'm coming to you from Yeshivat Rayon HaYehudi in Yerushalayim. And until next week, we'll see you then.